Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Little Red Rooster Summer Showcase. I hope you have had a chance to look around in this fabulous location and aren't sweltering too much in this humid heat. But yeah, I'm very excited about this conversation today. We are going to be looking at is CSR the future of brand innovation? And just to introduce myself first, I'm a design journalist, and I look a lot at the positive social and environmental impacts that design can have. And the topic of sustainability and how social impact plays into that is something that has been widely discussed over recent years. And I think as the world is in a very uncertain place right now, it's a very timely conversation, and a lot of people are thinking about how they can contribute more towards a positive future. And I carried out a trend report actually earlier this year for a publication that I work with. And from a lot of the experts that I interviewed, the sort of overarching themes that came out was really a sense of sort of nostalgia and a sense of escapism, but it was really sort of driven by the sense of community and connection. And I think when we talk about CSR and social impact, it really is about how brands and businesses can drive, communities forward and have positive impact in those areas. So today I'm joined by three of the brands that are actually showcased in the building, and how they are each working individually to implement social strategies within their companies. And we have Kev Penney, the marketing manager at Marshall. We've got Sharon Costi, the founder of homewares brand CasaLatina, and Chris Cooke, the design mentor at King Living. I think coming to you first, Kevin, actually, it will be a good place to start with Marshall. It would be great if you could introduce your role in more detail, and also how sort of Marshall is implementing social impacts and the importance of that within the company.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Kev Penney. I'm the brand marketing manager for the UK. And I guess really when it comes to Marshall is a brand with a lot of heritage. We began in 1962. And, very much from the community of Hanwell in London. And I think using that as the starting off place, it's been a family-owned business for so many years. We've just gone through a change where the brand has been bought, but the family members are still there. So family and community has always been really strongly tied to the brand. Everyone that is either a fan or a user of the products feels like they are part of the Marshall family. When we do all of our presentations, Jeremy, our CEO, loves to talk about the Marshall tattoo, about people who actually brand themselves with our brand, and that really shows a strong sense of identity and community.
I was going to say, because as a brand, it is so iconic and something that we can all relate to, or have all got a connection to in some way, shape or form. How do you nurture that within the workforce?
I think I've been with the brand for 10 months, and so I was a fan of the brand before I worked for the brand. So on my first day when I arrived into Bletchley and Milton Keynes, where they make the amplifiers, I myself, as a fan of the brand, was very aware of the heritage of that site. And I think what really struck me was that this was not just a headquarters of a global brand, but it was actually a manufacturing facility for a local, and in its roots, it's a local employer. There are people that worked in that factory for up to 50 years, which is incredible. And you've got multi-generational, workforce at play. And they're all from the housing estates around the Bletchley site, which is amazing. You've got Emma, who works in HR, and her husband works in the R&D team. And then you've also got her son who's working on the factory floor. So it's such a family affair when you go to Marshall, and it's so warm and inviting. It's just not something that's easily replicated. I think when you work for lots of different brands, and I've had a few roles within different industries, and when you walk into a place where everyone knows each other by name, and it's got that kind of warm feeling when you walk into that office, and that's really hard to nurture. But I think Marshall's really done well. As I speak as a new joiner, that it has that sense of community, and the people that work there are massive fans of either the music or the product or the heritage of the brand, and it shows up in its most authentic way.
And in doing so, it's also preserving, British manufacturing, but also certain craft processes that are included within the, production, and that also gives a sense of, ownership and, pride as well within the workforce.
Exactly. I mean, when I had my first day, there were people on the joining day that were doing it from all different departments within the brand. So people who were, so if you go down to the Marshall display, the boxes, the cabinets and the amplifiers, they're all made in Bletchley. They're all handmade, and there's people that's been there since the age of 16 all the way up to, 50 years of working time. And they've worked with Jim. Jim was a big believer of, he was putting the boxes together back in the day as well. And it's really great because he implemented the signing and the ownership of the craft. Like, there's a bit of a joke where he got everyone to sign the insides of the boxes that they were making, so they could work out who had made it. If there was a problem, then it could be come back and rectify the problem. And that still happens today, where everyone who is, if you buy a Marshall product from Bletchley, there's a sticker saying this is the person that made it, and it can trace all the way back. So there's human beings behind the craft of this. So you've got people, and they move from department through to department. So they'll do the cabinetry, they'll work out how to build the boxes, how to sand the boxes, then they'll learn how to do the vinyl wrapping. You can work in electronics. It's very much a full experience if you want it to be there.
And I think that's a really important point to touch on, is the sort of the naming and the sort of spotlighting of individual craftspeople that work within the company. I know that sort of a lot in the fashion world where sort of artisanal skills have been sort of utilised by brands, but they've not always spotlighted the independent and individual craftspeople that they've worked with. I remember I went to an event about 3 years ago in India, and it was a fashion event, and this actress was wearing this dress on the red carpet, and down the back of her dress were all embroidered the names of the people that had made the dress. And it's that thing about where you're, these individual talents that have contributed to something, and it's showcasing and putting a spotlight onto them. And that's a really good way that brands can kind of build community and also honour these skill sets.
Yeah, I think bringing, let me try and rephrase it the way. I think due to social media, like YouTube platforms, people who are invested into pastimes or into hobbies such as, playing guitar or into golf or whatever else, or, sound production, you start to really deep dive into who works at the factory and who's making what and everything else. So when you get so involved into the craftsmanship, you start to recognize the names. And it's amazing that people who come, we open our doors in Bletchley to anyone can come up and do the museum tour. And it's amazing, people will come from all over the world to come and do the tour. And they'll actually meet the people where they've seen the sticker, and they'll know who this person is. They'll go, oh my God, you're Paul. You made my amp that I bought 5 years ago. And they get to meet the person who actually built it. And for them, they are so emotionally invested in the brand for us, we kind of go, oh, it's a local employer. It's where people turn up every day. But they're actually coming far and wide. And they probably know more about the brand at some point than I did. And it's an amazing, we really celebrate the nerd when it comes to our product. I don't say that as a horrible thing, because I'm a massive nerd when it comes to audio product. And I just think, getting that excited about the details is the whole point of bringing culture and community together.
Absolutely, yeah. It's raising the profile of an individual whilst creating an emotional connection to the brand. And I think, Sharon, coming on to you, I mean, that's the kind of basis on which you founded CasaLatina. It would be great to hear about how it all started.
Right, so hi, everybody. My name is Sharon. I'm originally from Venezuela, and my business partner is originally from Colombia. We've lived here in the UK for about longer than 20 years. And in a trip that we did together down to Colombia, we kind of started looking at things, and we really wanted to get that connection back to our roots. But also we met so many wonderful people that were doing all these artisan products, and we really wanted to I don't want to say like give back, because we're not giving back, but help build that industry. And that's kind of how we started CasaLatina about 2.5 years ago. So for the first year, we just basically were traveling the country, meeting people, meeting the different artisans, seeing what they could do, and kind of like developing what we wanted to, how we wanted to showcase it and make it into a product that would have a market in other places that's not Latin America. Because the product, when you see it there, is quite Latin, and it works wonderful in that setting, but obviously we needed to translate it into something that we could that we could market here, and at the same time really respected the different techniques and the communities that have been using those techniques for centuries.
And I mean, you say you aren't giving back, but you really are giving back to the communities, because it's a very collaborative process that you have built with the communities that you're working with. Can you talk us through that, how you sort of work not only on the sort of design aspect, but also the business and the brand side with the makers themselves?
Right. So the makers, everything we do is a entirely collaborative design, in the sense that we come up with an idea, and they come up with how can that idea be implemented. So, and the reason for that is very simple. They are the ones who understand the technique rather than us. So the product is really a homage to the technique rather than a technique to do something that I had an idea I wanted to do. So it really is about taking those techniques and making sure that we can create a product that is more marketable to a wider audience, but also that it really keeps that technique and it makes it viable for them to continue working in those industries. Because obviously what's happening, but not obviously, but what is happening is that perhaps if they have to sell it only in the domestic market, it's just not a viable career choice, if you wanted to say that. And a lot of these people then end up doing other types of jobs that are sometimes away from the community physically, and just away from their traditions. So by doing this, by creating this market, we are actually helping that technique and those communities to continue to thrive in the way they want to live, not necessarily, going to Bogota and being a cleaning lady or.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's huge cultural significance for the techniques themselves and how they've been woven into the fabric of these societies and communities for years and generations. So it's so important to preserve these skill sets. And there's a huge storytelling aspect, I'm guessing, for yourselves as well, to then share those stories with the global audience.
Yeah, absolutely. The storytelling and the story of each of these techniques is at the center of every piece. So if you go to our website, every piece will not only say this is a placemat made out of Iraca palm. No, it will tell you like what is the technique, which community, tell you about the people in the community that have made it, not down to the exact person in this case, because they work more in a communal way, but really talk about who are these communities, who are these people, where the technique comes from, and just what what the meaning of this product is. Because a lot of them do have or come from very interesting and traditional elements of those communities.
And when it comes to the pricing and remuneration of the skill sets, it's again a very collaborative process between yourself and the communities, working sort of out the timings and what's involved and how they should be remunerated for that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this is a process that we, over the last 2 years, have worked with the artisans that we work with. At the beginning, we would come to them and we were like, well, how much does this cost? Well, this costs this much. And then we really try to understand from them what that cost structure is. And what we found out is that because this is all like woven into their daily life, so they don't go to the office to like weave these things, they do it in their houses within their normal life, they wouldn't put a price to their own time. So they would tell us, oh, this is how much the palm cost, and this is how much this cost, and this is how much I need to pay the guy that makes the frame, and therefore this is what I'll charge for it. And we really had to work with them and tell them, how long does it take you to do this? Okay, it takes me a day. So you're earning 5,000 pesos on what ends up being yours is 5,000 pesos for a day. So if I tell you to go and do a bunch of errands for me for a whole day, would you actually, and I tell you I'll pay you 5,000 pesos, would you accept to do that? They're like, of course not. And really trying to understand from them what is their time and that their time is valuable, and that if this is to be a sustainable way of living, they need to make sure that it pays for their time. So that's one thing. Now you say, well, we're not a charity, right? So we need to make money. We obviously want to keep the cost of the product as advantageous as possible for us. So then what we do is we work on different parts of the supply chain. So we'll buy palm in bulk, which they don't have the cash outlay to do, and we'll do those things across the supply chain so that the cost of the product comes down without affecting what the artisan receives at the end of the day for their work, which is the important thing.
And it's integrating them within this whole, as you say, supply chain, but also the educational aspect of then teaching them these skill sets and a new mindset, and sort of reframing value in their minds as well, that they can then take forward in their own lives into other parts of their life.
Absolutely, and that they can do, there is a lot of other companies that don't necessarily do this, but we believe that by us starting that process of education, that they will be able to tell other people that come and buy from them, you know, like, no, this is my time. My time needs to be valuable. And if you want to reduce the price, then these are the things you can do to reduce the price. But you need to pay for my time.
And have you seen a shift in the community since working with them?
Well, to be honest, we work with 60 artisans. So it's very difficult to say, oh, we've shifted like the whole communities. We know that our artisans only want to work with us. So that clearly would indicate that they feel that working with us works better for them. And hopefully, as we grow and we bring in more of our artisans within our own workshops, like the idea, we don't work with that many artisans because we want to work in a way that each artisan that works with us actually has a security in their income. So we're trying to guarantee them a certain level of income every month, and then vary that with volume, because when you don't know, when sometimes you get, say you got like £10,000 one month, and then you don't know whether the next month you're going to have 0, 0, 0, your life is very stressful. It's better to get £2,000 every month for 5 months than £10,000 in 1 month. And so that's why we work with a limited number of artisans, so that we can build that. And as we grow, we'll bring more people into the fold.
Amazing. It's exciting to see. And you're currently on your way to receiving B Corp accreditation. How has that process been, and what have you been sort of asked to measure in terms of your social impact?
Right. It's a lot of paperwork, that I would say. But for us, we need to show that we know where all the product comes from. So we need to show across the whole supply chain that we are doing the correct thing. So that might be knowing that the product is sustainable, knowing that we're not using plastics, knowing that our packaging is sustainable, that we're paying fairly, that we know who is doing what. So there's a whole process of not only like the raw materials, it's also the process that you use and how you work with the people that are involved in your business. And you've got to measure it, and it's now become even more difficult. I think like it was kind of not easy, but they were kind of lax on certain measures, and now it has become like quite strict on. I guess they need to make sure that people are not just saying things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, it's a lot of paperwork, I'd imagine.
Yes.
And Chris, coming on to you, if you could, introduce. I know it's a relatively new venture for you working with King, but if you could introduce the brand to us, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So hello, everybody. I'm Chris Cooke. I'm design mentor at King Living. As Roddy said, it's a relatively new venture for me. I started with the brand at the beginning of the year, and previous to that, I had 15 years' experience in the luxury industry. And I think what attracted me to King was its reputation for being a very sustainable brand. And actually, for me, that was super important because starting my career maybe 20 years ago, kind of customer and consumer behavior I've seen change massively, to the point where 20 years ago, brand really wasn't as important as it is now. Nowadays, when people buy into a brand, they're creating almost a reflection of their own value system. And so a brand really has to reflect their value system to be attainable by them. But to do it authentically, it has to kind of be rooted in the foundation of the brand. And I think that's what really attracted me to King. The kind of start of King is a really interesting story. The brand was founded in 1977 by a designer called David King, who was based in Sydney in Australia and was working in the local markets. And he left work one day and noticed an old sofa that was just discarded by the side of the market. And it really enraged him. He was really annoyed. It was like, this isn't right. People shouldn't be discarding these kind of products and leaving them to rot in our streets. You don't need to do this. You can do something better. So this became the kind of foundation of a brand. And he then went into the development of furniture and started developing steel frames that all of our furniture now is built with. And it means you can create a product that lasts a really, really long time. And that's super important for a brand that wants to be sustainable because it creates this longevity with the product. It means that the brand are creating things that people create an emotional attachment to. And so the way that we have built the business since then is to design these kind of solutions into all of the pieces. So every King piece that you'll see, and this is one of them today, this is the Aura sofa. These all have removable covers. So we know that obviously within interior design, trends change so quickly. But our whole ethos is about creating timeless products that will last for generations. So we want to design into these products the fact that you can remove the covers, so you can still change the materials, you can change the colours, so that as you grow and your taste change, the sofas can remain with you. And I think that's something that's really important to the kind of fundamental CSR topic we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you touched on actually about how consumer sort of belief and value systems have changed. And, I think we've in the past thought, consumers are governed obviously by price and aesthetic, but now, not only the environmental strategies of a company, but the cultural and, social values of a company play into those, buying decisions. But you, as a company, are very vertically integrated and you have control over sort of every production process. How has this helped you to sort of control that and then to sort of embed those values intrinsically in every sort of part of the chain of production?
Well, it really helps. It really helps. So we are a vertically integrated business. And what that essentially means, as Roddy said, is that everything from design to the research and development to manufacture, all the way down to the showrooms, that's all owned and managed by the King brand. So that means we can be super authentic in everything we do, but also means that we can set internal standards for welfare of our employees. It means that we can, we're very flexible as a company. We can try things out, and if they don't work, we can change them really, really quickly. But it also means that we can instill our values into every part of the supply chain as well. So we're very strict about the kind of materials we use and who we work with. And being vertically integrated really does feed into that.
And because obviously the brand has expanded quite a lot globally in recent years as well. And it's obviously being a family run company, and David's still very active in the company. How do you create that sort of sense of community within your global teams?
I think it starts from kind of creating that culture as a family-run brand. David is still, in the every day of everything we do at King, which is fantastic. It's really rare to see a founder of a brand that's still, 70-something years old. I won't say his age, 70-something years old, but he's still in every single day of it. And it's fantastic for us as a design team to work with the founder and kind of deliver his vision and his expectation. But that kind of mentality as a family-run business, it started the brand in the post-war era where nothing was wasted, everything was precious. And that kind of mentality has filtered through to today for the business. So even today, when, say, we're looking at designing new products, and, for example, the Aura sofa, the shape of this sofa, it's very round, it's very curvaceous. A lot of sofas are made like this with a steel frame and then have foam that cover them. But this kind of curvaceous shape creates some offcuts, so you get some waste. And we really don't like creating a lot of waste within the brand. So what we try to do is innovate and actually reuse that waste product, and that goes into kind of the cushions that you see around us. So it's about innovating, but also keeping that kind of appeal of not wasting anything, of usability, sustainability in absolutely everything that we're doing.
And I think it's a strong commitment to a set of values that he started the company with, and he's still actively displaying on a day-to-day basis. So, inherently that is being filtered down and displayed to the rest of the team. And then also that is then showcased on an external level, building a deeper emotional connection with your clients. Absolutely, and it doesn't just stop, with the clients or with the customer. As you say, it starts internally in the brand. And I can say, like, within the design team, it's fantastic to have David there, but obviously he started the brand. There's a lot of provenance just around him as an individual. But when we're working, what's really important in a design team with kind of a global reach is that we are extremely diverse. So we have designers from all over the world. And during that design process, it's really important that everybody has a fair say. So it doesn't matter if you're David King or a junior designer, when it comes to creating the new concepts and products, we want everybody to share their input. And that's how you get a really diverse and global product out of it at the end of the day, and create a workforce and a design team that feel empowered by their ideas. And that's how you kind of develop as a brand, but also develop the best products. And I think it's really key to sort of nurture talent, through a company like that. I mean, I've worked in companies in my past where that hasn't been the case, and it's so obvious the discord within a company when that doesn't exist. What a shame, right? Because then they lose out on what could be a fantastic employee. I mean, we have on the site in Torella, we have trimmers and pattern makers, and that's a really, really artisan skill. If you like, pattern making is incredibly difficult, especially if you're trying to make patterns for furniture where you have to remove the covers. It's crazy difficult. But we're really lucky to have pattern makers that have been there for decades, because we do foster that kind of environment of collaboration, and everybody's input is really, really valued. And I think in empowering these individuals and giving them that sense of ownership over their part of the process, creatively, the opportunities that come from it for the brand are much better, as each of you are, have witnessed and are doing. And I think that, seeing that impact of like the social aspect of how we can build a designer or a craftsperson up, is extremely important. Absolutely, and obviously craft comes in many different ways. I mean, you've got the more traditional crafts in the woodworking and the trimming that we do, but design and the design process itself is also inherently a craft. I see the kind of digital technology and the guys in the team that can work up digital models to create new movements and mechanisms. There's a huge amount of craft in that. And so it's, as you say, it's about giving those guys a platform that they can feel confident to kind of develop their own ideas and create and innovate in new products. And I know it's separate to the brand, but it would be great if you could touch on the King Living Foundation, which I know was set up by the family in 2016, I believe, and just sort of outline what its mission and the charities that it works with. The King Living Foundation, as you say, started in 2016, and it was started by the King family as just almost a way to give back to the communities, community being super important to the brand itself. And they've helped many different charities, endangered wildlife species, cancer charities around the world for the last few years, even kind of supporting lower end charities with furniture, gifting them furniture, things like that in their headquarters and things like that. So I think that's something that's deeply ingrained in the business, this idea of charity and giving and creating communities, which has inherently come from being a family run business. Interesting. I think opening up to all of you, talking, sort of looking at sort of, I guess, business in the industry on a broader scale. The world as it stands today is a very uncertain place. There's no hiding from that fact. And I think individuals, as we come to work, as we are part of a team, we really feel like we need those safe and secure places more than ever. How and why, and is that so important, firstly? But how can businesses contribute more to that and to kind of nurture those safe spaces so that, you know, people feel seen and they feel like they belong as part of a community? 'Cause, you know, as being a sort of a gay man in companies that I've worked with in the past, sometimes I haven't felt the most sort of welcome in certain environments, especially in some of the factory settings that I've worked in. But I think it's really important to nurture these sort of places so that they become, you know, safe and welcoming to all, right?
Well, for us, it's about ownership. Like, you feel welcome when you feel that you are part of it. Mm-hmm. So for our artisans that work with us, it really is about you are part of this journey that we're doing together. So every time there's something in the press, we send it back to them and look, this is your little thing on the press, and they get so excited, put it on their like WhatsApp like notification thing, and you know, they become part of like the mission that we're doing, and we're doing it together. I think that for me is kind of like the real center of it. Everything else that you do is around that. So I used to work for John Lewis, which has a very strong feeling like that. You really do, or at least did, 20 years ago when I worked there, felt like you were part of John Lewis, and John Lewis you really felt like it was really your, they were always there for you, and it was yours, and everything mattered. And I think that that's true for our artisans as well, and everybody who works with us.
And it's understanding that you're contributing to something that's much bigger, and it's sort of a collective contribution that impacts, you know, wider society as a whole as well.
Yeah, and also like just seeing it through, right? You're not just giving me something. You're not just putting something in Servia Entrega to be given in Bogotá. That here it is. This is where it came to, and that becomes like, wow, I need to do. This is like somebody in London. Like I don't know if you understand what London means for somebody that's sitting in Leticia in the Amazon. It's like you might as well say the moon, but it's somebody in London has this in their house, and they've posted a picture on Instagram that is massive for them. It's really cool.
And it's interesting, actually. Do you sort of relay those stories back from clients as well to them directly so that they can see that?
Absolutely, we do it both ways. Okay. So we will tell the clients the story of the artisan, but we will also tell the artisan the story of the client. So we're just a middleman, really.
And I think, as you touched on earlier, Chris, about how consumer sort of behaviour has evolved, what do you see evolving over the coming years, and how can brands be aware that they're doing the right thing, and what does doing the right thing look like to you?
Yeah, I think doing the right thing is something that's like a topic that is coming to light, really. It's having brands that are open and honest and accountable for what they do. I think taking it back to design, which is, you know, my field, doing the right thing really starts at the start of a product. It's about making sometimes the hard choices and having to go the extra mile. You know, it'd often be a lot easier to build something very quickly and get it shipped out, but to actually do the lead work, to find and source the right materials, to design into the products things that are easy to change if they break or sustainable. It's something that you have to start and have a foundation of right at the start of the project. And I think the brands that do that and the brands that have that they're going to be the ones that are relevant in the years to come, and the ones that do it retroactively and kind of stick it and tag it on at the end, they're the ones that in the future it's going to be really apparent that they're doing that. And that's the kind of the rise of the greenwashing message at the moment. You can really see the brands that are trying them and the brands that aren't. And to be relevant, you have to try.
Mm. And it's interesting because I think over recent years, and I know that a lot of, I'm talking from quite a general perspective, but from the sort of design exhibitions that I get to visit throughout the year, over the last sort of couple of years, it does feel like brands are quite fearful of taking risks because the world is quite uncertain and the economy is not the most stable. But I think to create a more diverse and inclusive world and something that is exciting, you have to take risks with emerging talent, with new talent, and not just collaborate with sort of the designers and studios that might have the sort of the safety net of a profile behind them. What would each of you say to sort of encourage brands to take those risks in an uncertain time? Because as you know, there's not necessarily a guaranteed financial sort of reward if they're taking a risk on collaborating with an emerging designer. But for me, I see so much emerging talent and they just can't find their foothold within the industry because they're not given a platform by bigger brands and organizations, because brands and organizations aren't taking those risks because they're working with names that we've heard of for years because it's a safer bet. But for me, the industry can only evolve and change through new and fresh talent.
And it will. And I think, sorry, Kev, I'll take you talk in a sec. I think the world is also becoming a much smaller place. Macro trends are taking over the world. And in previous years, a trend is something that kind of emerged and grew. And now a trend on one side of the earth is almost overnight spread across the globe. So I think those kind of working with the emerging talent that are ahead of the game in terms of trends is super important. But it comes down to kind of like the culture within the business and the way you set your company up. I think if you have a business that is open to trying new things and to helping designers grow as names, then I think you're going to reap the rewards from that. It's a two-way stream. Like, you're going to come up, they're going to give you new ideas that are kind of interesting, but at the same time, you're helping them grow as an individual. So in my mind, that process is definitely, it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can just echo basically what Chris said. I think, you've got to take that and you've got to harness it and bring it with, if it's relevant, into your brand values. I mean, for Marshall, the whole point of us being a relative company is that we are giving the tools to artists we do an awful lot of groundwork with grassroots music community. So we've been part of the Great Escape in Brighton. We were part of the Hanwell Hootie, and we are actively looking for acts that are not like mega bands. We are looking for the community acts, the guys that are getting their first run on the ladder, and that's the way. And through connecting with the bands that are right on the grassroots level, that's an amazing opportunity for social listening to inform the wider set for your brand. So those guys they're doing the gigs in the week, but then maybe they're also working for the brand. That feeds ideas. It all kind of, and as long as you have a nice flat hierarchy where everyone feels uninhibited to kind of approach senior teams to say, I've got this idea, this is the validation on why I think it could work. Everyone gets the opportunity to bring that to the plate. I think with that transparency, like you said, the world is getting smaller. It means that there's a lot more of a DIY attitude to people on the ground nowadays, which it's really difficult because it's, with, streaming platforms, everything else, it's getting harder and harder to be a band on the road and making the money. But it also, they see themselves as a lot more on the front line. They own their brand a lot more. And I think that way it gives them a lot more of a marketing savvy approach on how they want to conduct themselves as their own little business. So when a brand like Marshall is working with an emerging act or brand or band, they're almost like their own little business or brand that you want to collaborate with, and you want to take their authentic storytelling. And as long as you don't start breaking off into offshoots that don't really sit with the core values of your brand, you'll always be relevant. I think as soon as you start trying to stretch the narrative and start hunting after trends, that the consumer is really aware now of what's going on, and they want to buy into brand storytelling, because I think the old adage of buy right, buy once is never been more true. People want value, and people will pay for value, and they want to make sure that what they're investing their beliefs into, as well as their cash, is not misfound.
It was always really impressed me with Marshall, actually, because when I visited South by Southwest with them 2 or 3 years ago, the sort of level of talent that they were nurturing and bringing through was so impressive.
Yeah, we've got the label, and I think the label is an amazing incubator, because we do, with my colleague Cam, we do grassroots venues, and that starts as like a test bed for smaller bands, and then we can pick them up and work with them through different campaign mechanics. So, for example, we just worked with the radio station Kerrang Radio. We did a radio competition. We also then gave the winning band an opportunity to play at the Old Blue Last, and from there they got an opening slot at Download Festival, which is, for a band that is just, it's a huge leg up, and it gives them massive opportunity of visibility. And so I think, it's just having the ability as a brand to really not give back because they're valid in their own right, but just being a lot more open to look wider than previously, I think, in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think actually I remember you saying in our conversation before the event about the away days that the run that Marshall run as well, which I know I've been on company away days before, and they're not the greatest, but this actually sounded really fun.
This was amazing. I mean, I've done away days where it's like, okay, we're going to do some axe throwing and quad biking, and you're like, really? Okay, let's make of this what we will. But I mean, this was my first proper away day with Marshall, and they took over Dreamland in Margate. So I don't know if any of you have ever been to Dreamland in Margate, but it was, I've never seen a brand take over an entire theme park. It was absolutely incredible, and it was, I don't know, 500, 600 staff from all over the world. And I think, in the last few years, obviously, after the pandemic, everyone got very used to, Teams calls and everything, where that kind of physical interaction between team members is a bit more harder to kind of take for granted nowadays. So being there all together, and it was just an amazing moment to just kind of see someone, shake them by the hand, give them a hug, and go, oh, it's so great to finally meet you, and actually have all those, because when you're doing Teams call, it's so incredibly focused on the topic and what you're trying to achieve, because before you know it, 30 minutes has elapsed and you're into your next meeting. So it was an amazing opportunity to like really have a drink and have a talk and really expand on your conversations, and that's where new ideas usually flourish. But again, it's like you're saying with the originator of your brand, Terry Marshall was on stage playing saxophone with a band on the main stage of Dreamland, and I think that's incredible. Like I think he's 76, 81. Okay, so even bigger kudos, 81, and that's a guy that is living the brand. Yeah. We played the Hanwell Hootie, and he was the penultimate gig of that day. So at 81, I mean, I'm half his age, and I was thinking, I'm tired. I could do with a hot chocolate and go to bed soon. But this guy was playing saxophone at like 10:30 at night, and I think bringing the whole community of the brand together is incredible, And we're doing lots of like workshops on how to strengthen that relationship between everybody that works together, whether it's drum workshops or going to the Libertines recording studios and creating a Marshall choir. It's putting people slightly in their own comfort zone, but that's where you kind of foster that real collaborative approach.
And I think just before we go to questions, I think, how do we nurture that human connection in a world of AI, in a world of digital media, and especially as younger generations who are more engrossed in the world of digital media? How do we nurture this human connection to show its value to those younger generations coming through in a rising world of the scariness of AI?
I think it's just the incrementality. I think you can't just, like my kids are very digital, and it's a very safe environment to have that kind of like barrier where they can they feel like they're in control of their environment. And it is like sometimes just pushing out of your comfort zone in small steps to, make connections in real life with other people. Because I think that's a a core value in human society that needs to be retained.
100%. Thank you to each of the panelists. I'd love to open up to some questions. I'm sure there must be some thoughts buzzing through your minds. Please don't be shy. Someone has to be the first to ask a question. It would be great to hear from... There you go.
How aware do brands and businesses need to be of not coming across as insincere when it comes to CSR, it comes to these things? It must be a fine balance to not almost go too far to a cynical mind.
Yeah, I think it's essential for them to be aware. To be honest, I think they are aware of it. But I think the bigger risk is not being genuine. And I think it's important now more than ever for all brands to be their authentic selves and to kind of push the message of what they're about, what is their value system about. But it's also super transparent. Like, people these days can see right through, a lie. They can see right through something that's been added on at the end of a process. So I think now more than ever, and certainly into the future, it's essential to tell the story as a brand, talk about where you came from, and really talk about the why. Like, why is it that you exist? Why do you do what you do? What gets you out of bed every morning? And if it's an authentic story, at King, because we want to make better furniture for people, because the design world is about solving problems, and we want to solve problems for everyday people. If that's your story and that's authentic, then scream it from the rooftops. And if it's not, then you'll get caught out, I think.
Yeah, I think the why is the most important part. I think if you're sticking to your narrative, then the brand relevance is always going to be intact. If Marshall suddenly decided it wanted to start sponsoring Wimbledon, people would start to scratch their head and go, yeah, but it's so many eyeballs on the brand, we're really going to, extend our reach to unbelievable amounts of people. But people would go, but why? What relevance does it have within your brand history? What relevance does it have where they would then question, what are your rationale for where are you going to go? So I think and how does that benefit the community and where you came from? I think, so the why is always the most important question when you're on why are you making those decisions and where you're going to go to.
I think that, of course, all of these things are the most important thing. But I think that people on brands need to also be honest that they are a company that's here to make a profit. And I always, when I talk about CasaLatina, I always say, we're not a charity. Don't think we're a charity. And I think if you say your why and say the impact that you're saying, and at the end finish it, but we also make a profit. And it's important that we make a profit, otherwise we can't do any of these things. Being open about that is just like, it's so important. That's what makes you not cynical.
I think that, transparency is absolutely key in that regard. And so many brands that I've seen over the years have opted to say nothing because they're scared of saying the wrong thing. And it's just owning your narrative like you've exactly done, and understanding and opening the doors to your audience and showcasing what you're doing in every detail. And understanding that it's a journey. No one is expecting you to be perfect, but just owning the fact that you're on this journey and you've got targets and goals and ambitions to be better and do better, and that's what you're working towards. There's another question at the back.
Yeah, I just wondered how you measure your social impact, please.
Me?
Go for it.
So we measure our social impact. At the moment, we pick up like more qualitative measurements because we are just so small, but we have plenty of direct stories and impacts that have happened within our community of brands. We've only been around for 2 years, but for example, one of our artisans was able to send her daughter to nursing school, the first person in her whole family, extended family, that has gone to nursing school. We have another artisan that put down like a proper concrete floor on their house, which they did with the profits that they made from the work that they're doing for us. We now have a community of artisans around Colombia that have chosen not to not to plant coca leaf and plant this palm, because they know that we are going to buy it from them, and therefore it will be profitable for them. So obviously we're a very small brand. It's difficult for us to make big, like, statistical analysis, but we are measuring how we're changing the lives of each of the people that we work with. Hopefully we'll be able to change more people's lives.
Yeah, sure. I think the way we're measuring it right now is how we show up within the communities. So and also there's been quite a reset within Marshall in the last year or so. And so we've got several kind of directions that we want to achieve within the brand. One is really highlighting the fact that we still make within Bletchley. And so a lot of our social commentary is going about championing the communities that we have in the house, and we want to kind of communicate that. So when we are putting that through our campaign channels, we kind of make sure that that is the core message that we're trying to achieve through.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a number of ways you can measure kind of your social impacts. You can do it externally, and through King we obviously have the King Foundation, which looks at supporting communities and charities. But also personally, I can look at it from internally in terms of my team, and I think it's really important to give kind of junior designers and designers the platform to be their best selves. And it can go down to the granular of like a working review. I want to see these individuals grow, and it's about in that review giving everybody a voice, making sure they feel heard and empowered, and building a business that starts the right way from the inside out. So I've personally seen members of my design team grow to the point from a point where they weren't necessarily confident in their own designs. I mean, design is a very, very harsh mistress. It's subjective at times. Everybody has an opinion. And so it's super important, I think, for designers to have a sense of confidence and confidence in their own voice and their own opinions. So, when I start working with a design team, for me, it's all about making sure everybody steps up to a level where they can be their best self and create their best and most innovative ideas.
It's a really difficult one because obviously when it comes to environmental impact, it's very easy to measure the carbon footprint of a product. But when you're talking about cultural relevance and community projects, it's quite difficult. But I guess working with accreditations like B Corp and things can help to drill down into some of the specifics. And I think as time goes on, and I think more of these certifications and accreditations will help us to measure in a tangible way social impact, which notoriously has been very wishy-washy and hard to decipher. But hopefully that will improve. Final question.
In many parts of the world, there seems to be a lot of pushback at the moment against DEI initiatives. Do brands feel that you can separate CSR and DEI, or are they inextricably linked?
Yeah, I think that environmental and social impacts are always going to be linked. The environment is the world we all live in, and our decisions as a society will always have an impact on that. Like at King, it's often one of the biggest carbon offsets you have on something like a piece of furniture is when you get rid of it and you keep changing it. And that's one of the things that we as a brand feel passionately about when it comes to design longevity. It's about having a piece that you love and that you can kind of live with for your entire life. So when it comes to designing these pieces, it's all about kind of creating a timeless aesthetic. And I spoke before about kind of creating these covers so you can kind of grow old and live with your piece of furniture. That means that these pieces can grow and live with you for a seriously long time. And I think, even though we have a lot of kind of social kind of impacts in terms of things like trends and tastes, and those change and evolve, from a design point of view, if you can design a product that will stand the test of time, then I think you also improve that kind of environmental factor as well.
Yeah, I think for me the two are inextricably linked. You can't separate the two. I mean, the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in is a direct result of human behaviour, and the only solution has to, is changing human behaviour, and that will, in time, hopefully solve the climate crisis that we're in. But yeah, so it's separating the two. They have to be focused on together, worked on together. But yeah, great question. Thank you everyone for coming. I think we're probably on about time to wrap up. Do feel free to ask further questions after, if you've not been courageous enough to ask one in public. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and thank you to the panelists for your time.
Thank you.